Hello everyone, in this recording, I'm going to demo the first two Excel assignments in Chapter 10. These two assignments focus on the practice of using Excel pivot tables. The first one is a accounts receivable aging analysis. In this data set, we have each customer, their invoice amount, and the original due date of each invoice. I'm going to try to find out for each of the customer invoice, how many days is already past due by the end of the year. Then use the pivot table to group the past due date into a few ranges. So we can easily tell for each range of the account receivable past due, for example, less than 1 month, between 1 month and 2 months, then 2 months and 3 months, and then for this past due dates range, how many invoices fall into each group. So if you open your data set, your number may be different from mine. Don't worry, just use the data set I posted in Blackboard for the assignment. And for my demo data sheet, we have customer, each individual invoice dollar value, the initial due date, and the date we are analyzing this receivable is by the end of the year. So first, I'm going to create a new column. So I will just call date past due. And this new variable should be the days between the analyzing time, normally in the end of the accounting period, and the initial due date. So for example, the first one, the due date initially is December 2nd, and now we are on December 31st. So there'll be like 29 days date past due. So it will be a deduction. So I'm going to use a formula equal to this today's date, because we are going to focus on this one. So I don't want to change. So it will be a fixed variable. So I'm using the dollar value to fix on this. So it will be $F and then $1 and then minus the due date for the first invoice. And now it's showing, because this is the date, I'm going to change to the whole column to a general or numbers. So it's not a data variable, or it's like just 29 days. And I will reduce the decimal, so no decimal needed. It will be the whole days. So the first invoice data past due is 29. Okay, using the fixed today's date minus the original due date. Then I'm going to copy and paste this formula to the rest of the invoices. I think the easy way you can do is just highlight. Okay, so highlight the first the formula we did. I believe you will see this black cross in the right bottom corner of the cell. You can just double click. So if you double click, this is a quick Excel function. So it will copy this formula to all of the remaining rows in your data set. So make sure you click on the first cell, and when this black cross shows, double click that, and all of the formulas will copy down to the last row. So otherwise, if you can also choose like select and drag down, but in case if you have many rows, the dragging, you may lose the mouse. Okay, you lose the formula. I think the double click will be the most easy way to do it. So now I have this data past due, but for each individual invoice, I still have no idea how many, like for example, falls into 0 to 30 days or 30 to 60 days. So I'm going to start on the pivot table to do the summaries. So pivot table is very useful when we try to analyze the original data in different ways. For example, the total invoice for each customer, or this grouping of the data past due. Before I do the pivot table, there's one step I need to finish. So right now we are in the original Excel worksheet. Before I can apply the pivot table, I need to convert the worksheet into a table format. You cannot directly do the pivot table, use the original Excel worksheet. So this is very easy. So you just make sure your mouse is inside of your data range. So any cell inside your data range, and then I can easily do this. I think here, format as a table. Oh, there are different ways you can do this, but I believe this is a simple way to do. So format the range of your data into a table format. So click on that. You can see there are different formatting in terms of the coloring and the shade of the color. So I'm going to use a light blue. And the default of your data range should appear. So I'm going to use it. If you don't put your mouse inside the data range, you need to manually specify the data range. Okay, that may cause some trouble. So that's before you create the table, okay, make sure you put your mouse inside the data range. And my table already has headers. Headers means the column name, and is default already checked. If you don't have this header, okay, you need to uncheck this. So, okay. And you can see now the format of the data, okay, look like more like a table format. Then I'm going to start on my pivot table. So for pivot table, I also can start from different ways. Normally I do is again, make sure my mouse, like I select any of the cell inside the data range, and then insert. Okay, you can do insert a pivot table, or you can click here, summarize with pivot table, either way. So if you click on insert, and the very first option here, so pivot table, and the table range, okay, this table one is automatic name. You can change the name to a different one or customize the name of the table. And I want my pivot table, means my summary of the data, to be placed in a new worksheet, not with the original data. And if you have multiple table with relationships, you can check this, add this data to the data model. Since we only have one table here, or if you have a relational database, you can check this one. And okay, so you can see you will get a new worksheet, like sheet 1. You can rename it later, but there are two working areas in your new worksheet. The left part will be how your summarized data will appear after you choose the variables. So that will be your output. And the right side, you will see your table field choices. Okay, that's like your selection field. And all of the data column appear as the choices. And underneath, we have 4 different like dimensions, okay, you can choose. Mostly we will use the row and the calculation of different values. And then you also can add filters or columns later. Okay, we can do like 3-way analysis, but here we are only doing the simple one. In Blackboard, I also post some tutorial videos from YouTube for the fundamental pivot table analysis. So make sure you check those. So watch those videos before you can practice your own, because that's give you the direction for the basic functions. And this one I'm going to use because I'm trying to summarize the invoice fall into the range of the different range. So I'm going to use the data past due as my main analysis variable. Okay, data past due, I will drag down to the rows. So it's just to drag it, or you can click is putting here. Okay, let me reverse it one more time. So I'm dragging the data past due variable under the row. And you can see all of my, is like some, not like grouping yet, but all of the different data past due already sorted from the smallest to the largest. So that's the data past due. But I want to have related to the original invoice. So this invoice amount, I really don't want to do any calculation, but it will work as a variable to help me figure out the count, how many invoice falls on this data past due. So I'm going to drag the invoice amount under the values. So now you can see they summarize. So for example, the first data past due is 9 days. So means the total invoice amount 9 days past the due is this $1,447 something. So you really don't know how many. So this is only the summary, like the total of the invoice amount. But my focus is on how many invoices already 9 days past due. So I'm going to change the calculation from sum to count. And this can be easily done if you change, because the default calculation is sum. So I'm going to click on this small black triangle and click this one, value field setting. Value field means you can change the calculation from sum to other, like count, average, max, minimum, or product. So I'm going to change to count how many invoices, and the name change to count of the invoices, and then click on OK. So you can see for each past due date, how many invoices fall into this number. Still not grouping yet, is just each individual the data past due. So I'm going to do the grouping in a second. But now you can see the purpose. The row label means the data past due, and I can easily change. So it's like you're working on your regular worksheet. I can change the column name. Okay, like I just call like date past due. And this is the number of the invoices. Okay, like you can say, maybe you can say like a number of the customer or number of the invoices. Oh, but I just leave it as this. Now I will group, because these are the individual past due date. I want to have a range analysis. For example, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, or past 4 months. Because the range will give us a general information for the different aging of the account receivable, how many invoices or customers fall into the group. For do the grouping, you can see if I can click on any of the data. So I think probably this label, let me try. So if you click on here, yeah, I can do, see, this is sorting only, so probably I need to do this. Yes, so when you try to group all of the data past due into different range, okay, make sure this one I highlight one of the data value, not the label, okay, not the field name. So I highlight the first row of data and right click. Also, I think you can see the grouping when you're trying to do the data. Okay. So if you click on the data menu, and you see here we have the grouping option somewhere. Yeah, here, this one. Did you see the grouping here? Okay, like group or ungroup. Or you can right click. You also have the group and ungroup option. And I will do from here, so group. And the group, you can see before you choose your own range, and these are the current range of my data past due value. So the minimum is 9 days and the maximum is 163. So I will customize this from 0 to maybe like 180. Okay, like use the whole days, like 180 is 6 months. So, and then increment by 30. Okay, means I'm trying to summarize the data past due every month. Okay, 0 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 90. Okay, this. So you can customize your grouping range. Then I will click on OK, see how your data will change. And rather than each of the individual data past due, I now have groupings. So 1 month, 2 months until like 6 months of range. And then you can see how many invoices fall into these groups. And the most one you can quickly see, right? So between 2 months and 3 months, we have the most invoices past due. And you also can easily sort this. Okay, if I want to sort the invoice amount by, you know, from small or from like, but I think this will be fun because we are looking for this range. Okay, so you can see this. And for the last group, okay, between 150 to 180, we have 12 invoices. And you can imagine those will be the invoices most likely become default later, means it's harder to collect. So with the more days for the invoice past due, the likelihood to collect them in the future is reduced. So this aging analysis is one of the descriptive analysis. So it means we are trying to get an idea for the past transactions, what's happened in the past, how we analyze or summarize this account receivable aging situations. And this is how the distribution of the data past due. Also, if I want to push this a little bit further, I want to use a chart, right? This is a table. The visualization will be more easy to communicate. So I want to create also a pivot chart. So I can do from here, make sure your mouse is inside of your pivot table. And then I think design, yeah, choose design, not design, sorry. Should be the pivot table or pivot table analysis. Okay, continue on here. So under the data and then pivot table analyze and then choose pivot chart. So this one pivot chart, and you can choose different chart type, column bars, line charts, pie charts, bar chart. I'm just using the column. Okay, so I can see this the size of the group. Okay, you can see that's a distribution. Okay. So the most invoices falls into between 2 months and 3 months. Okay, then the next is 120 to 149 days. And you can name, okay, like this total, for example, to aging analysis, okay, I can change the name when you want to make your digital dashboard later. Accounts receivable aging analysis. Okay, I really don't need this. Probably I can delete this, remove the field. Oh, everything. Okay, I probably can just hide all the field buttons. Yeah, so I can just hide this, and I don't need this. So make your chart looks better. Okay, so but anyway, you can change the color. What else? So this is basically the first Excel assignment, descriptive analysis for accounts receivable date past due. Okay, the first assignment. Then I'm going to share the second. So the second assignment is also a pivot table, but is more simple. So that one is like a diagnostic analysis. But let me start a new share for the second data set. And this data set is like your total, all of the journal entries we made in the month. I'm trying to make an assessment about the segregation of duties. Segregation of duty is one of the important internal control. And the general rules is that the people enter the journal entry, the people type the journal entry into the system should be supervised by a different approval person. So it means if I enter the journal entry into the system, then it got to be approved by another person. So segregation of duties. Imagine if I enter the data, also I'm the person approve the transaction, it's very easy to have mistake or errors or fraud. So for example, if I made a fake journal entry and I approve it, and it won't be easily caught by the system. So we are trying to make assessment, do we have any transaction happened in here, like the person entered the journal entry and approval person happens to be the same. So we are trying to find out any evaluation of this internal control, the segregation of duties. So how we can do this? I can easily check, make a pivot table for the people enter the transaction and the people approve the transaction. Do we see any transaction happens to be with the same person have been have doing both? So first, again, I need to convert the worksheet into a table. So click on anywhere of your data set, so under your data range. Another thing for Excel pivot table is you make sure there is no missing data. I'm saying here, this is not a missing data, okay, but not apparent missing data. So we needed to do the data check before we do the pivot tables. So data cleaning and data preparation. So make sure you have the mouse in any of the range and then format the table, so like light gray, and confirm the data range. And then, so now this time I can use summarize with pivot table. You also can initiate the pivot table by clicking on this, still the table one, and appear in a new worksheet, and then click OK. Then I'm going to choose the people enter, I think, the approval in the column. Let me see. Yes, so you can switch. Okay, you can switch the row and the column, no problem, but one under the rows and one under the columns. And then I'm trying to see, because we have how many, so like we have MW, that's like the name of the personnel. And we want to see how many transactions entered and approved for each of this combination of the people. So I'm going to choose, like, for example, you can use the debit or credit. Again, we are trying to use the count of the value rather than the sum. But initially, when we drag the debit or credit, it is showing the sum, but I'm going to change to count. Okay, so you click on the triangle and the value field setting and change the sum to count. And now we can see this data output, the interpretation. So means, like, for example, like MW, or like MW enter the transaction and approval is AC or DH. Okay, that's no problem because the people entered and the people approved different. And then we have VR enter the transaction, approved by AC or approved by DH, no problem. The only thing, if you can see, is this one. So we have one transaction entered by VR, also approved by VR, the same person. Okay, that's something you need to pay attention and want to investigate later. So why we have a transaction entered and approved by the same person? is an accident or is it intentional fraud. So you need to pull all of this transaction from your journal entry system and check that. Okay, so make sure this is a valid transaction. And again, how we can find this transaction, you can go back to your original data sheet and looking for the date, okay, or the account name, but related to the, so if I think probably you can do something. So you can use the output to help you go back to which transaction this is related and find out, okay, the reason for this same enter and the same approval. So use the pivot Excel can help us check the internal control, the segregation of duties. So that's but pivot table can be used in many other ways in addition to the two practices we did. If we have time in the beginning of chapter 11, we will do a more advanced level of pivot table, okay, that time. But also make sure you watch all of the tutorial videos I posted. That's give you a simple but like a fundamental review for the pivot table functions.